Hey, welcome to Rocking with Nostalgia. Today we're jumping into the 32-bit era and we're taking a look at 10 underrated PlayStation 1 games. So grab a rocking chair and let's get started.
PlayStation.
Hey, thanks again for joining me. Please subscribe if you are new to the channel, but let's jump right in. So if you've seen my other videos, the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo underrated games lists, you know that I give a brief story of how I got those systems, so I'm going to do the same with my PlayStation. Story's probably not as exciting, but anyways, it would have been December of 1996. I owned a Sega Saturn at the time. Yes, there will be a video on Saturn, 10 underrated games for that. And anyways, one of my best friends gave me a copy of Ultra Game Players, this exact issue, which would review the system, the consoles, and give them a score for where they were at in their lifespan and how they did for that year. So, that was pretty unique at the time. I don't remember other magazines giving review scores for the system itself. So anyways, me being a Saturn owner, living in my own world, thinking everything was great, I get this magazine and I see that they gave a Saturn a 6 out of 10. And so I immediately start questioning, oh crap, did I get the wrong system? And then on the other hand, they had the PlayStation in there and they gave that a score of 8 out of 10. And it was really high praise. They said, you know, lots of great games are on the horizon, and this was really the system to look out to. And yes, if you're interested, they did review the Nintendo 64, which they gave a 7 out of 10. So anyways, fast forward a few months, this would have been then spring 97, and one of my friends, just out of nowhere, he just decided he was done with gaming. Don't know why. He was around the same age as me. But so he had a PlayStation with 10 games and 2 controllers, and he sold that to me for $250. So I was lucky to be able to get such an amazing deal and jump into the world of PlayStation, which, if you put a gun to my head, it might be my favorite system of all time. I'm not sure. There's definitely some others that would challenge that. But needless to say, I absolutely love the PlayStation. So today we're going to take a look at 10 underrated games for it. But first, a little rant.
I've heard a rant like this before.
Game journalists, anytime they refer or talk about PlayStation 1, they always have to preface it, well, PlayStation 1 didn't age very well. 3D graphics that were new, they didn't do very well at the time, and it's hard to go back to them. I am so sick of that crap. It is ridiculous. They act like we're idiots and we cannot handle some diversity or maybe some flaws in some games. Those of us who grew up with it, we know these games have flaws. Camera work, you know, some of the controls. I talk about it in a few videos, a few games here in the video. But they talk to us like you just can't play these games. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Again, those who grew up with it, we were able to adapt and we had so much fun with these games. And if you didn't grow up with these systems, you're a younger gamer, give them a try. You're going to be able to figure it out. There is so much fun to be had in these games. The PlayStation has an amazing library, and journalists just immediately crap on it, and I think it really turns people off from trying a lot of these games because they think it's so archaic and so ancient that it's not worth trying. And again, that is an absolute lie. So now that that rant is out of the way, let's take a look at 10 games that I feel fly under the radar and don't get the kudos that a lot of other PlayStation games do in the library.
Brave Fencer Musashi.
In 1998, Squaresoft gifted us gamers, with what I consider to be one of the most underappreciated action RPGs, Brave Fencer Musashi. The game's narrative revolves around Musashi, who's a prophesized warrior who's summoned from another dimension to rescue a kingdom that's under attack. You embark on your journey through vivid 3D environments where you engage in real-time sword-based combat, and it blends elements of action RPGs, platformers, and Metroidvanias into one amazingly captivating experience. Now, during this era, it seemed like the media always had to compare a PlayStation title to an N64 exclusive. Basically, this is PlayStation's answer to X Nintendo 64 exclusive, and Brave Fencer was dubbed as PlayStation's response to Zelda Ocarina of Time. I can't really weigh in on those comparisons. I only briefly played Ocarina of Time. I know it's a travesty. I will play it someday. I actually have the remaster on 3DS. But what I can say is the joy of revisiting Brave Fencer Musashi for this video was absolutely awesome. The story's so engaging, it's lighthearted, humorous, and is conveyed with these whimsical cutscenes and top-notch voice acting. There's a unique ability to assimilate special skills from your foes, which is then used to tackle challenges and progress further in the game. The game has RPG elements to it, such as leveling up. It has a dynamic day-night cycle, a bustling town to explore, and a super colorful cast of NPCs who really enhance the immersiveness about the game. While it may not perfectly emulate Zelda, the formula of Zelda on the PlayStation, it does, at least to me, it stands tall as a super challenging action RPG that boasts an extremely compelling narrative, absolutely delightful puzzles, and thrilling boss battles. So if you're seeking an unforgettable adventure that may or may not be similar to Zelda on the PlayStation, Brave Fencer Musashi is the game to take you on that journey. Our next game is also from 1998. Metal Gear Solid rightfully claims the spotlight for revolutionizing and popularizing the stealth genre on the PlayStation. However, lurking in the shadows is another gem deserving of some recognition, and that game is Activision's Tenchu Stealth Assassins, which quietly emerged around the same time and invited players into a world of ninja intrigue and bloody swordplay action. Players can embark on missions as Rikimaru or a Yame, and they're going to navigate 3D environments where you strike from shadows and take out your foes with the most incredible, lethal, satisfying ways. The stealth mechanics still remain incredibly satisfying even by today's standards, and I still vividly recall my first encounter with Tenchu. This would have been after being hooked on Metal Gear Solid for quite a while, which did come out at the same time. So they had very similar mechanics, but Tenchu allowed you to sneak up to enemies and slit their throat, and blood would just be flying everywhere, all over walls, all over the ground. Just incredibly memorable, especially for me during those teenage years where it just left a mark on me, and one that I really have never forgotten. Tenchu's levels are shrouded in darkness, many of them are, and sometimes it can be a little bit too much, they're a little bit too dark, but it does really convey the tension of sneaking through shadows and silently sneaking up and taking out your enemies in awesomely violent ways. The arsenal and the secondary weapons adds depth to the experience, so you have grappling hooks which you can use to facilitate rooftop travel. There's shurikens, smoke bombs, grenades, and other weapons that help you creatively take out and assassinate your enemies. The game has brief cutscenes throughout, and they are pretty cheesy and over the top, but this exaggerated voice acting, it just adds a layer of entertainment, and it does enhance the overall experience for me. It's like that good cheesiness that you want, that's enjoyable and funny and really draws you in.
Get away! Help me, somebody!
Your bodyguards are dead. And you are next.
So if you're looking for some stealth action that's devoid of spies, so no Metal Gear Solid, Tenchu Stealth Assassins is a thrilling journey into the world of ninja assassins. So slip into the shadows, hone your skills, and unleash your inner ninja in this unforgettable, underappreciated classic.
My money! My money!
Capcom was riding high as one of the premier developers for fighting games. But they didn't just sit back and relax. So in 1998, another game from 98, what an amazing year. I'm really realizing that. Anyways, they unleashed rival schools united by fate on the PlayStation. So imagine high school rivalries taken to extreme levels where it's delivered by over-the-top 3D fighting action with lightning-fast gameplay, tight controls, extremely vibrant visuals, and an unforgettable cast of characters. Rival Schools came onto the scene and is the first fighting game that I remember that combined the colorful, over-the-top cinematic, zany characters, and bombastic special moves that were staples of 2D fighting, but were now brought into the 3D world. Something that was kind of unique about it at the time also was you get to choose 2 characters at a time. While you couldn't switch them out during the battle, you could swap them between rounds, or you could unleash these devastating team-up attacks where these moves would fill the screen with these eye-popping, anime-inspired action, and it really was guaranteed to decimate your opponent. But that's not all that made Rival Schools stand out. It had incredible depth for a fighting game. You had the story mode, which was packed with these engaging cutscenes, and it would unlock just a treasure trove of characters and costumes. And let's not forget, this game also had an entire second disc, which was called the Evolution Disc, and it was full of additional modes such as training, tournament mode, group fighting, plus it had these extremely addicting mini games like a home run derby, volleyball, and a soccer shootout. These mini games added even more fun and variety to an already packed experience. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the mini games unlocked, so if you do want to see those in action, I would check out some gameplay footage through other YouTube videos. But you can take my word for it, Rival Schools is an absolute gem in the world of fighting games. It offers hours and hours of over-the-top, electrifying entertainment, and it will keep you hooked and coming back for more. If you've seen my Genesis and Super Nintendo underrated games videos, you know that I'm a big fan of vehicular combat racing games. And in 2000, we got Roll Cage Stage 2, which was a sequel that really scratched that itch in the 32-bit era. Roll Cage Stage 2 is an insanely fast, fluid, and futuristic racer where cars can be equipped with different weapons that are picked up throughout the various racetracks and used to take out other racers. The novelty with this game is that the vehicles have oversized tires that allow them to flip and keep driving no matter which side they're on. So if you remember those Ricochet RC cars from back in the day,
Announcing a revolution on wheels, Ricochet, and now that it's loose, the RC world will never be the same.
that's exactly what Roll Cage Stage 2 is, but in video game form. And these cars provided a unique and memorable experience in the racing genre, which honestly can kind of be hard to stand out in. The graphics were incredible at the time, and they hold up surprisingly well today, especially with emulators where you can enhance the resolution. The game's aesthetics creates a dreamlike world that you speed through, and any indecisiveness while racing can lead to catastrophe. The track design is phenomenal. It features jumps, there's wall riding, there's inverse sections, there's diverse terrain, and one of my favorites was the dynamic weather effects. And there's also plenty of unlockable cars and tracks, so it offers a lot of meaningful playtime to it. While it seems that some fans might prefer the original Roll Cage, for me, Roll Cage Stage 2 is what I grew up with, and even today it remains one hell of an awesome vehicular combat racing title. So if you love fast-paced, chaotic racing games with a twist, Roll Cage Stage 2 is a must-play. This next game, it holds a very special place in my heart. It really does. Growing up, after my parents got divorced, my mom started a tradition of buying me a video game every summer while we were doing our back-to-school shopping. So that gave me those last precious few weeks of summer to really dive in and immerse myself in a game. And one of those games that was bought was Tomba. I first encountered Tomba on a demo disc. Do you remember those PlayStation Underground Jam Pack demo discs that you could snag for $5 at the store? Well, that's where I got Tomba, and after trying it out, I knew I was in for something special, and boy, was I right. Tomba is more than just a side-scrolling Metrovania platformer. It's this whimsical adventure with RPG elements that were ahead of its time. Nowadays, you know, RPG mechanics are very common now, but seeing them in a platformer during this time was a breath of fresh air, and it's one of the many reasons that Tomba captured my heart. One of its unique gameplay mechanics is the ability to move between the foreground and the background, and it allows you to use various weapons. You can swing from trees, you can take out enemies in creative ways as you make your way through the game. But what truly sets Tomba apart is its fantastic and whimsical personality. From Tomba's iconic pink hair to the charming story of evil pigs taking over, there's very delightful music. Every aspect of Tomba just oozes with charm and character. And sometimes you just need, a cozy, feel-good game to escape from the stresses of life. And Tomba delivers that in spades. And guess what? We got great news this year. We got the news in 2023 that Limited Run Games announced that they're going to be bringing Tomba to the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, and the PC. That's unfortunate for Xbox gamers being left out of the party, but this means that players will have a chance to experience one of PlayStation's best hidden gems, and without a doubt, one of my all-time favorites. So they'll get a chance to play that on modern platforms. So when that comes out, I would definitely try it if you never had a chance, and get ready for an unforgettable adventure with Tomba.
For some reason, the evil pigs seem to be collecting gold. I bet your grandpa's bracelet that was stolen by the Kuma pigs was made out of gold, too.
We have another 1998 game. Damn, that year was impressive. Anyways, this game was brought to us by Activision, and it ignited my love once again for vehicular combat games, and that game is Vigilante 8. And this is a game that strips away the racing elements and focuses purely on the all-out combat action. Players' vehicles are armed with missiles, machine guns, cannons, and special weapons, and players battle it out across various interactive and destructible environments where it's set in the Southwest United States. I was in the Midwest at the time this game came out, but now I live in the Southwest, so this game is I connect to it even more today. The goal is simple. You want to destroy all your opponent's vehicles and be the last one standing. To this day, I still debate to myself, did I prefer Vigilante 8 or Twisted Metal 2 more? Both offered excellent action. They had massive levels, tons of hidden secrets, and endless hours of single and multiplayer fun. Where Vigilante 8 stood out was with its unique 1970s themes that features vintage vehicles, a groovy disco soundtrack, and colorful characters. While I don't think the characters quite reached the iconic status of those in the Twisted Metal series, the 70s theme added a fresh twist that made you want to try out every character and see each story ending for all of the characters. It's really sad that open world vehicular combat games, the genre, has pretty much vanished. We did have the Vigilante 8 arcade version in 2008, which was pretty much a remake of the first one. And I know there was a Twisted Metal game on the PlayStation 3. but as far as I know, and I could be missing something, but there aren't any games like this anymore. And to me, that's a real shame, because I had an absolute blast firing up Vigilante 8, and if you haven't tried it, I think you'll have a blast too. Here's another gem that I stumbled upon through the demo discs. Man, demo discs were freaking awesome back in the day, but this was 1999's Tiny Tank. So the game follows the shooting adventures of Tiny. He's a small but mighty tank. It's in a post-apocalyptic future where robots have taken over and Tiny is humanity's last hope. It's a third-person 3D shooter where players are going to navigate diverse environments. Along the way, they'll upgrade Tiny's arsenal, and you're going to make your way through waves and waves of enemies. For me, this game feels like an extended version of the on-foot missions from Star Fox. So if you love those, you'll definitely enjoy this. I'm not really sure if people do like those missions or not, but anyways, if you enjoyed it, you're definitely going to like Tiny Tank. The controls, the graphics, the shooting mechanics, the upgradable weapons, they all come together to deliver a lighthearted yet action-packed experience. If you haven't noticed in my underrated games videos, quirky games that have memorable personalities, those really stand out for me, and Tiny Tank is no exception to this. The game, it features a fun story with silly cutscenes, and it has the typical humor of the late 90s and early 2000s. You know, everything during that time was quote-unquote edgy, and it was totally appealing to me as a teenage boy, but, you know, let's be honest, it still appeals to me even today. So you can press the triangle button, and it lets you hear various quips from Tiny. You know, there are these little rude quips, but they're harmless. Even the marketing team had a lot of fun with this, and they promoted the game as Tiny Tank, up your arsenal. So this attitude, the quips you could do with Tiny, the story, the fun bosses, all of this contributes to a presentation that was really perfect and fitting for the time, and it still remains a blast in 2024.
So far, no function.
As I mentioned when discussing Brave Fencer Musashi, it seemed like the media was always trying to find a PlayStation equivalent to a big Nintendo 64 exclusive. And in 1997, Croc, Legend of the Gobos, was seen as the console's answer to Super Mario 64. Inspired by Mario's groundbreaking adventure, Croc brought a charming, mascot-driven experience to the PlayStation, where players could run, jump, climb, and swim through a variety of colorful and charming levels. The graphics were stunning at the time, and they really hold up well today. And once again, especially if you are playing on emulators and you have the ability to adjust some of the graphic options. Croc really showcased the PlayStation's ability to compete with the Nintendo 64 in the 3D gaming space. Now, the controls, they can be a bit touchy by today's standards, and like many early 3D titles, the camera can also be tricky. However, once you get the hang of it, you'll have no trouble playing and enjoying this game. Players are going to navigate levels where you collect orbs, you jump over obstacles, you tail whip enemies, and you rescue as many captured Gobos as possible. You know, very typical platforming game activities and elements. Here's a bit of fun trivia. This game was developed by Argonaut Software. They were the creators of the Super FX chip on the Super Nintendo. And Argonaut initially created and pitched a prototype for a 3D platformer starring Yoshi to Nintendo. But Nintendo passed on the idea, and the relationship then ended, so Argonaut retooled the game as Croc. How cool is that? So just like other games on the list, this offers a wholesome experience. It's perfect for young kids. It was enjoyable for me as a teenager, and it's surprisingly still fun to play even today. So if you're looking for that mascot style 3D adventure game, give Croc a try. The next game is one of the most innovative, strategic, and memorable fighting games from the PS1 era, and that game is 1997's Bushido Blade. The game is renowned for its lack of health gauge and the ability to execute one-hit kills. Besides these instant kills, players can also target specific parts of the body and disable them for the rest of the match. So, for example, if you hit a leg, it causes your character to limp or drag it on the ground. A blow to an arm can render it unusable for wielding weapons, and so on. So this level of realism is rarely seen in fighting games, and especially so at the time of release. Once you become proficient at the game, matches can last for several minutes. I vividly remember me and my buddy becoming very good at the game, and our matches could go on and on and on, only for one of us to land a sudden death blow out of nowhere. The game features these expansive 3D levels that has diverse environments within them. There's different elevations, and there's structures to navigate through. There's 6 characters you can choose from, but the most interesting aspect is when you select a character, you also there's a choice of 8 different weapons to choose from. And those different weapons greatly affect the fighting mechanics. So strategy and experimentation is key to finding the best combination for your playstyle. Bushido Blade offers multiple modes. There's a story mode, a versus mode, a slash mode, which is where you try to defeat 100 enemies. And then there's also a unique yet gimmicky first-person mode. Kind of weird, but it's still fun to try out. There was a sequel to Bushido Blade, but I never played it. Now, I did own the spiritual sequel, which was on PS2, called Kengo, Master of Bushido. However, I hardly remember playing that much at all, or really anything about it, so it must not have been very remarkable. But that was certainly not the case with Bushido Blade, which remains one of the best and one of the most unforgettable fighting game experiences on the PlayStation 1. While the media may have not drawn the same comparisons as they did with Croc and Brave Fencer Musashi, for me, 1996 Motor Tune Grand Prix was PlayStation's answer to Mario Kart 64, at least until Crash Team Racing came along a few years later. Motor Tune was developed by the same team behind the legendary Gran Turismo series, and it's a whimsical, cartoon-style racing game with playful, colorful aesthetics, has unique and interesting characters, there's various weapons and power-ups, and many fun and adventurous themed levels to play through. Despite sharing its name with an earlier game, this is actually a sequel, as the first Motor Tune Grand Prix was never released outside of Japan. So this would have been Motor Tune Grand Prix Part 2 for those in Japan. The visuals are outstanding. They're vibrant, very cartoonish. They're packed with personality and charm. Even today, the game's art style holds up beautifully, and it captures the feel of racing in a living cartoon. The controls are tight and responsive, but unlike other kart racers, there isn't a dedicated button for drifting. So instead, you're going to use the brake button to pull off sharp turns. But even if you don't want to drift, you're still going to need to use the brake to avoid crashing into walls. So that's a little bit different than Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing. The game does feature typical power-ups such as bombs, speed boosts, and oil slicks, but there's a unique twist to it. So players gain coins by driving over these $ markers on the track, and then they spend those coins on the power-ups. what's unique about it is you can build up your coins and decide when and how many power-ups at a time to use at once. So this adds a strategic element to the game. So, you know, if you wanted, you could save up all your coins and then unleash just a barrage of special attacks in the last lap. You could do like 10 in a row. Again, that's different than typical kart racers. This game, it might not reach the heights of Mario Kart or Crash Team Racing, but MotorToon Grand Prix is a fun little racer with a perfect mix of speed, strategy, and lighthearted racing action that's totally worth your time. So again, if you're a fan of kart racing games, MotorToon Grand Prix is going to be a fun time for you. So there we have it. 10 games from the PlayStation 1 that I feel are underrated and ones that I think you'll have a lot of fun if you check out. Again, let me know out of these games, are they ones you know, ones that are new to you, and what suggestions you have. I mentioned this previously, but so much engagement from especially the Sega Genesis video. Even though a lot of you disagreed with what I considered underrated, it was still awesome to hear all the feedback and hear all the games you suggested. I'm definitely going to have to make a viewer-suggested underrated video at some point. It was so amazing, you guys. So I thank you for that. I thank you for your time, and I will see you next time.